Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the first day of CyberScotland Week. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to you all. We'll be recording this morning's session. My name is Craig Kennedy and I'm Head of Cyber Risk at Nortal, and today I'm joined by my friend and colleague Henry Rõigas. Henry is the Principal Threat Analyst here at Nortal and is a former NATO advisor who is skilled in proactively spotting cyber threats. The title of this presentation is Exploring the Dark Side of the Web, and over the next hour or so, we'll be exploring why so many businesses struggle to keep their digital assets safe, who the threat actors are, what they're trying to achieve and how they operate, how cyber threat intelligence can be used to proactively identify criminal activity and avoid criminal threats, and what impact the war in the Ukraine will have on cybersecurity globally going forward. Before we get to that, I'd like to take a moment to look at some cyber threat trends to set what we're about to discuss in some form of context. At the start of this year, Allianz highlighted in its annual risk barometer that cyber incidents and business interruption are the top 2 risks businesses face in 2023. It's estimated that the global cost of cybercrime will rise to $10 trillion by 2025. And that cost is spread across every sector. So cybercrime is a very real issue for all businesses. Despite that, the National Cybersecurity Survey published by the UK government late last year reported that only 19% of businesses have a cyber incident response plan in place. And when one considers that the average global cost of a data breach is £4.35 million, that's a remarkable statistic given the significant cost associated with a failure to keep cyber and digital assets safe, particularly where substantial savings can be made through reduced incident response costs and business interruption costs when an organisation is prepared to deal with cyber threat efficiently. Now, some of you may remember the Financial Times headlines at the end of last year, which read, "Cyber attacks set to become uninsurable," which were attributed to comments made by the Zurich Chief Executive Mario Greco. Now, while that might be a bleak prediction, there's no doubt that insurers are finding it increasingly difficult to quantify the risk associated with cybersecurity, with many seeking to restrict their liability under policies that they've underwritten. Now, the cyber insurance market is currently going through the longest hard phase in history, with prices spiking, cover being withdrawn, and disputes surrounding cover soaring. And that makes it all the more important for businesses to do what they can to safeguard their digital assets. Now, everyone will remember the frenzy that took place to prepare for GDPR coming into force in 2017, and similar preparations are required from a cyber resilience perspective under both the NIS2 directive and the Digital and Operational Resilience Act, both of which mandate base levels of cybersecurity for large organisations. So having a good cybersecurity posture is no longer a nice to have, it's increasingly a must have. Slide, please. But why do so many businesses struggle with cybersecurity? In my experience, pre-GDPR, few businesses would have been able to name 2 of the risks that you see on the right of this slide as a potential fallout from a cyber attack. But with cyber attacks rarely out of the headlines, it would be fair to say that the risks shown are now generally accepted consequences of cyber disruption. But why is it so difficult to get the basics right? Well, perhaps the most obvious difficulty is the continually evolving threat landscape. Where threats continue to evolve, so too does the need to have a dynamic cybersecurity posture. Now, that can be a challenge to industry, as nobody has an infinite IT security budget. And with so many different providers in the market, many offering only one service line, it can be a challenge to keep up with the vast range of products on the market, far less weave them into an effective, comprehensive security solution. Another challenge businesses face is a lack of understanding of how a cyber attack would manifest itself within their organisation. Many organisations fail to harmonise their cybersecurity and business continuity postures, meaning that even if their cyber resilience is reasonable, there are no complementary policies and procedures in place directing the response to a crisis. And it's only by understanding that and testing how a business would respond to a crisis that it's able to identify whether it is anything close to an appropriate level of resilience within its organisation. So I'll come back to talk about the chapters of resilience at the end of today's presentation, but for now I'll leave it to Henry to take you all to the dark side of the web.
Thank you, Craig, for the introduction. Hello from my side as well. I'm Henry Rõigas. I'm the principal threat analyst at Nortal and in Nortal's cyber arm. And Craig was just mentioning the ever-changing threat landscape. That is a core challenge to cybersecurity and organizations that face cybersecurity challenges. And my role and mission in my professional life is really to understand what kind of threats are relevant to our clients, to organizations that we help out, and this informs them to put together, threat-informed risk assessments, so that they can essentially make the right investments in terms of resources and cybersecurity programs and etc. And today I'll be taking you to a journey, an exploration of what we call the dark side of the web. So really looking at who are the threat actors that target our clients and might also target your organizations. What do they do in the, we call it the cyber criminal underground? What are the motives? How do they operate, etc. And first, I would kind of ask, what is a threat actor? And to put it very simply, somebody is a threat actor to you or your organization if it has intent, so motivation to do it, capability, resources, tools, the knowledge to do it, and the opportunity to do it. Let's say your organization is not protected well, then this presents an opportunity to target you. And And here I'm going to focus on kind of three categories of cyber threat actors. And this visual or graph is based on a study of over 2,000 enterprises that have faced a cyber breach. And they've also mapped out who are behind those cyber breaches. And within the business world, it's to a very, very large extent cyber criminals. So you see 97% of the actors behind a data breach are criminals, followed by a very small percentage of nation state actors and then hacktivists. In reality, the lines are quite blurred. You might have nation states who engage in very criminal activities. You might have hacktivist groups who are claiming that they're activists, but actually doing nation state activities, etc. But it gives us a broad kind of sense of where we are at in terms of who are the cyber threat actors. So it's mostly criminals. And if we look at the motivations, so the intent behind those attacks, it's blatantly clear that it's all about the money. So close to 100%, over 90% in this particular study really identified that mostly cyber threat actors have, financial goals, and this is commonly linked with criminal actors. Then we have espionage as a source of motivation. This is commonly linked with nation states, and then we have ideology, which is logically related to hacktivist groups. So, but this gives us a kind of a broad understanding of who are the threat actors and what are they motivated by. And, criminals do whatever to make money. So they're not thinking just in terms of what are the cybersecurity weaknesses. They just think of how to make money. And there are many different ways on how cyber criminals make money. In this talk, I'll focus on the threat or the area of activity that is called ransomware. It has grabbed the most headlines, certainly, and it has become the main means on how cyber criminals use cybersecurity weaknesses and attack organizations in order to make or reach financial gains. So let's go into the topic of ransomware. So imagine waking up in the morning, having your cup of coffee, eating your breakfast Monday morning, and then finally getting yourself through the blue Monday, and you open up your laptop and you see this screen, which states that all your important files are stolen and encrypted, followed by some explanations on what to do about it. So usually a guide to contact the ransomware actors, so you can pay a ransom, and which will make your data decrypted and then your files deleted, the files that they have stolen. And this is a scenario that happens to organizations every day, small and big organizations. And when it's coordinated and a targeted attack, then you simply cannot access any of your data, any of the traditional communication means. So you're basically left with this blank screen. You can only perhaps use your phone to call your IT department, etc. But they might be also be in the same situation. So what organizations usually do, if they have prepared, they have an incident response plan, they start to execute on it. They might have dedicated teams that deal with it, but more often than not, this comes as a surprise, and you're left with finding outside help. You might need to inform your law enforcement agencies, etc. Commonly, organizations involve a digital forensic and incident response team who will take the situation over, who will find out what has happened, and also try to find a resolution to the situation as quickly as possible. So dedicated teams who deal with it. One part of the strategy might be that you decide to engage with the ransomware actors, and with in the case of Lockbit, which is the most kind of famous ransomware group out there currently, you would be leaded to their dark web website. So you would need to go on Tor, use a computer that isn't infected, of course, so that you can access, and you'll go on to their dark web website. You find more information about the incident, how you might recover your files, etc. And you might even have a login to their online platform, so you can start engaging with them and start negotiating with them. And to exemplify how this kind of talks might go, I found a few publicly available examples of some of the negotiations that have actually taken place with ransomware actors after this has happened. In reality, these negotiations might be conducted by a professional kind of cybersecurity expert or a negotiator, or it might be simply that you see the screen, you go and talk with them without involving anybody, which we do not recommend, of course. So example one, I talked about the motivations, and this is an actual chat that has been disclosed. In this case, the ransomware actor, or I call it ransomware support because they essentially operate as a business. They initiate the conversation saying, "Hi, are you authorized to negotiate?" So they know that they need to speak with people who actually can make the payment and are authorized. So, and the victim is usually confused, asking what is the procedure. And I found this example interesting because if you look at the quote or the chat bubble that just popped up, you see that it kind of summarizes the whole business. So our goal is money. We are not interested in causing harm. That's their, discourse. We tell you the amount we want for unblocking the network and deleting all the files that we have downloaded from you. And they also claim that in addition to sending you the decryptor, which kind of allows you to decrypt the files, they'll also send a proof of file deletion, which is, you need to trust that it happens. Another example that I found, which was interesting, explains kind of how they negotiate. So in this case, the victim initiates the chat. The victim is, confused. Please send help. The ransomware introduces themselves. They have ransomware trends, and they have it's kind of a branded thing. So they have a name, a public name of the ransomware group. In this case, it's called ContiLocker. I'll come back to Conti later. And then, the victim asks, we have a public school network. Is this where we get our files back? Total confusion and maybe panic and then really stressful situation. And the ransomware group or support person comes back with an explanation that, there's more than 1 terabyte of personal data is downloaded. We encrypted your devices. But I have good news. We're businessmen and all your problems will go away if you pay us. And that's the interesting bit here. If you pay us $40 million. So they start the negotiations, and this happens quite often from a very high starting point. So it's kind of within negotiation tactic, it's like anchoring the initial ask. And this is not uncommon. And as a result, the victim is simply speechless, asking like, are there accidentally added zeros to that number? And what the ransomware groups very often do when they target specific organizations is that they do some basic reconnaissance on them and on their basic capability to pay. And in this case, they say that, we see that your reported revenue is more than 4 billion. And if you make a very basic calculation, 1% out of 4 billion is $40 million. So they think it's very reasonable, and say that we know that you have the required amount, and the victim is confused, saying that this is a public school district, public meaning that students do not pay to attend, etc. What this case also highlights is that the cybercriminals really don't care who do they attack. They might say that they're not out there, their aim is not to cause harm. That might be true in most cases, but they don't really care who is being targeted as long as they see that they can extract money. And if you look at the statistics, the most lucrative targets tend to even be in the healthcare domain. And a few years ago, we actually had a case where there was a ransomware against some healthcare institutions in Germany, and as a result, they needed to transport some patients, and it caused actually a loss of life. So it's not even only about bottom line impacts, losing revenue, losing clients, but it might be even in some cases causing physical harm as a result or as an impact. So they really don't care. They look at how many assets, how lucrative the target might be, and they don't really care in which category the kind of victim falls into. And then coming back to the chat, they say that you cannot possibly think we have anything close to this. Ransomware doesn't give on it, saying the limit, will start and sell and publish your data from next week. So this is a very common tactic. Some of the ransomware actors have like countdown clocks. So it's all about putting pressure. And they also are very good sometimes in highlighting the implications or the other costs that might come from this if they decide to leak the data. So it's about reputational costs, think about regulatory fines, lawsuits, etc. And we've also seen cases where they have very concrete references to specific lawsuits and regulatory fines in their negotiations. And based on this, the victim comes back. It might be that it's actually a professional negotiator who is trying to stall for time as they deal with the situation. But in this case, they say that they have approval for $500,000. So usually, I don't have full information on how this ended, but I expect they came to an agreement to a certain extent. And the third example that I thought that was interesting is also about kind of what I call customer research or victim research. And this is a chat that's already been ongoing. And this is a case where an e-commerce or digital marketplace provider was targeted. and experienced ransomware. So they are again kind of in negotiations saying that, your online sales seem pretty nice. Why don't you meet our demands? We have databases. We have access to your databases and traffic statistics, etc. So they have access to the company's data, and they based on their claims on that. The victim comes back saying that, please discuss with your boss about lowering demand. It looks good, but e-commerce is not our core business. So trying to convince them that the initial ask is too high. And then they come in with the kicker. So maybe they have or maybe they haven't, but they have access to your data, so they can browse through whatever contracts, whatever emails your company might have had. And then they ask about cyber insurance. So many companies insure themselves against such cases. And then they say, most of our attacks are covered by insurance. Just go to your insurance and get the money, and it's a win-win situation. And then they say that, okay, it seems like we found what we're looking for. They actually found the insurance contract, and they say that, the coverage is much lower than the 7.5 million British pound that they are asking for. So let's just ask your insurer and we'll get it done. And we see more and more ransomware actors actually using the fact that the victim has insurance to kind of as an additional indication that they might get payment out of the victim. And lately, because of the it's very difficult to measure the risk of getting ransomware, and because of the claims are so high, often companies are getting it's more difficult now to get proper cyber insurance that would make sense for organizations, because the premiums are high, but also the requirements that come with cyber insurance are getting higher. So it's not so clear cut as just having insurance and then having it paid. So let's look at some numbers that relate to ransomware to really understand how big is the threat and to put some context around these very particular examples. So in 2021, according to a study, there were 35 different ransomware actors, so different what I call ransomware brands or strains. There were over 2.5 thousand victims publicly shown in the leak sites. So the ransomware actors run leak sites and show who are their victims. And 2021 was kind of a peak in ransomware activity. So there was an 85% increase in the victims compared to 2020. All of these statistics come with caveat because we don't know the number of victims that have been not involved in or featured in a leak site, or who have not reported that they have been ransomware, and so on. So these are indicative numbers. And coming to the question of whether victims should pay, according to another study, which involved hundreds of cases, 46% of victims paid, 61% recovered as a result, which is already quite low, and only 4% got all of their data back. So even if organizations do not see any other solution than paying, then even then the results are questionable. And the standard direction now from law enforcement agencies is that ransom should not be paid, and you should try to involve cybersecurity experts and other professionals to restore your system, and actually you should be ready for that attack and have the technical backups, etc. in place. And one more number that I want to get out there is that usually ransomware actors ask for the ransom through cryptocurrencies, and cryptocurrencies provide a very neat trail, and then you can really see where the payments are going. And this is based on a study, I believe, made last year by a blockchain analysis company, where they saw that 74% of the ransomware payments ended up somehow in Russia. Again, this is not scientific number that's the ground truth, but it gives us an indication. And it also links with the question of whether companies should pay, and always this decision is made by the management, not by anybody else. So you consider different variables in making the decision, but knowing the fact that the lion's share of the organizations are based in Russia, and if you think about the geopolitical situation we are in, there are different legal questions also associated with making the payment that relate to the sanctions that have been made to different Russian actors. So it might be illegal to send funds to an organization that falls into the sanction under the sanction regime. And about 2 sentences about the average ransom payments. You'll see the graph here. 2020, the average ask was 900,000, and after negotiations, the average ransom paid was 300,000, based on a study. And in 2021, it almost doubled. So the demand were over 2 million, and the average ransom paid a bit over 500,000. So if you think about the cost of this is just one part of it. You might be lucky and you pay and everything gets settled, but this is usually not the case. But in parallel, you need to involve an incident response team, digital forensics. You have loss of business, loss of reputation, etc. But the demand itself, and if you decide to pay, is also of considerable amount. And if we look at the kind of evolution of ransomware, it really, in a way, came from humble beginnings. Like 10, 15 years ago, there were mostly attacks against individual computers. You might have seen this screen if you were attacked and they asked you to pay maybe, a low amount of money. But now, like, let's say last 5 years, or, within the last years, we've really seen like really branded experiences, really professional website, but also on the back end, there's also very targeted and thought out attacks. So instead of individuals, enterprises are attacked, and enterprises who fit certain criteria in terms of the revenue and assets that they might have. And this is a picture of an actual leak site where you have a countdown clock, which is intended to put more pressure on the victim to pay. And this is a screenshot of the Lockbit ransomware leak site, where they have listed victims with countdown clocks, also victims for which they have published files, but also importantly for victims where they have not published files, because they want to build a brand. They want to have so-called good reviews, if you can call it like that. That if you are in a decision of whether I should pay or not, you'll make an analysis of the prior actions of the group who is attacking you, and if you see evidence that they might have provided decryptors and didn't leak the data that they had, then you are more likely to pay, because you, in a very weird way, you have trust towards the organization that has attacked you. So it's operating in many ways as a standard business in terms of the customer relations, so-called customer relations, and this is shown by some of the leaks that we've seen. So when the Ukraine war ignited, let's say, a year ago, there were leaks from a ransomware gang called Conti. And this happened after the Conti, the ransomware gang, affiliated itself with Russia within the context of the Russia-Ukraine war. And the day after that, suddenly all of the communications of the gang were leaked, and assumptions are being made that this was done somebody who was pro-Ukrainian or maybe Ukrainian national. So as a result of Conti showing allegiance, they released, all the communications, and based on that, you can map the organizational structure of this ransomware actor, and you'll see that it operates like a standard streamlined business. You have an R&D team who focuses on mainly on the encryption techniques. You have business development team who deal with negotiations. You have finance team who deals with a very important aspect, which is money laundering for the business. And you also have HR teams who deal with recruitment. And actually, we are partnering with organizations who monitor the activity of ransomware actors. And you can really see who is trying to build up their capabilities by looking at the recruitment messages on the dark web. But also sometimes they recruit on the open web, especially in countries like Russia, where there's more, let's say, freedom to operate. And on the bottom, you also see a section on affiliates. And this brings me to the topic of ransomware as a service. So traditionally, which is a funny word a little bit, but previously, it used to operate like this. So you had a ransomware operator, maybe a few guys or girls somewhere dealing with the whole, let's say, attack chain of the ransomware. So they found the vulnerabilities, they found the victims, they dealt with the money laundering, they dealt with the negotiations, etc. So there's two stakeholders essentially: the ransomware operator and the victims. And lately, in the past few years, we're seeing their model change, and this is all guided by the motivation to make more money. And there's the ransomware as a service model, in which you have the ransomware operator who deals with all of the capabilities that were presented in the last slide. So money laundering, negotiations, the software itself for encryption, etc. But then you have affiliates who use this package of services and tools and find victims to attack. And it's a scalability model, very similar to how software as a service is being used. And this really allows everybody in the cyber underground make more money. And affiliates usually, in this case, the RAS operator just takes a cut. There have been different cases, but for example, 20% of the final payment perhaps goes to the operator. And the operators also publish even like affiliate policies that list requirements and list their strategies and tactics in order to make the system scalable, because there have been cases where affiliates attack certain organizations that cause that put the highlight or that put the RAS operator in front of the law enforcement agencies, and they put the spotlight on them. So even some of the policies might involve conditions on what types of targets to attack and what types of targets not to attack. Let's say if there's a ransomware operation against an FBI affiliated organization, then you can also believe that the ransomware operator will be in the spotlight of FBI, to put it very simply. And on the topic of making more money, there's this, within the ransomware operators, there's this baseline question of whether they should target organizations at scale and demand a small ransom, similar to one of the examples that I showed you, or whether they go for what is called big threat hunting. So they really filter out the targets, really infect systems in a way that there's a clear cost to the organization, and organizations that that might have the resources also to pay for a higher ransom. In the few last years, it's been mostly about the second strategy, but we have seen lately cases in which they also are again deploying the kind of the wide net strategy of asking maybe a few Bitcoins, which amounts to, I don't know, 50,000 USDs. There's no negotiations involved. They just encrypt computers at scale. It's not really targeted, but they want to, make money out of the scale of the operation, and kind of see both happening. So whatever essentially makes money. Another interesting aspect is how they actually force the people to pay ransom. So we spoke about encryption. This is the default mode. So you have data encrypted, you don't have access to your valuable data. Then the other extortion method is leaking. So they promise to leak your data at a certain point of time with the countdown clocks, etc. But now that some of organizations are more prepared for it, more aware of the threat, they're thinking of new methods on how to extort money. And here I've brought out a few cases like this. So after a ransomware attack, the ransomware actor created a dedicated web page about the organization where both the employees and the clients of the organizations could go and check whether their data has been accessed. So it's another way to create urgency and reputational costs for the victim. And I also mentioned that they have often access to your data, but they also have access to your contacts. So on the right side, you see an email that has been sent to all of the partners, buyers, customers of a company, highlighting that their store partner has been ransomwared. And all of this is to create extra urgency and push for the victims to pay. And if you look at the underground criminal market, so if you analyze the underground forums on the dark web, where people are selling, all kinds of illicit assets, there's this growing category of stakeholders within the criminal underground who are called instant access brokers. So these are malicious actors who focus on selling access to corporate networks, which then can be used by ransomware actors to do their thing, encrypt data, etc. A few stats on this. So during a period of 12 months from 2021 to 2022, according to one study, there were close to 2.5 thousand instances of corporate access for sales by 380 different brokers. These might be just different identities. And the lowest price for access to a network was only $5, and the average price $2.8 thousand. So this gives you a sense of how the kind of criminal underground works, and there are different roles within the, let's say, ransomware supply chain. And here on the slide, you'll see a rather standard ad in a forum where access to a UK IT infrastructure solution company is provided. They've done some very basic research. There are 15,000 employees. Revenue based on Zoom platform is seen as 6 billion. They have rights to the user, computer in domain. They give some details, and the bidding starts at $4,000. So it's a high value target. The bidding step is $200, and if you want to buy it right away, it's $6,000. So it operates as a standard marketplace. And here's another example of a guy called Mr. Hacker, who sells access to a bunch of different companies with kind of also different prices listed to them. And within these underground markets, these sellers also have a reputation question. So they built out their reputation within the forums, so they can increase sales. And this instant access brokers market is really witnessing an increase in activity. And I'll end the part on cyber criminality on this slide. So if you put the whole picture together, you might have this, what I call the ransomware value chain. It starts with some actors looking at whatever access they might get to whatever devices, to whatever networks. Then they do filtering to filter out the attractive ones. So they can say that, okay, this is a company with 6 billion revenue. They kind of filter out the valuable or attractive targets, and then they go to the dark web marketplaces. Then they sell the access. This is commonly picked up by ransomware affiliates who then use this access to infect the victims. And then the tools, resources, the negotiations, money laundering is handled by the professional ransomware operators. So it's kind of a value chain. So you start off with a low price and you'll add so-called value to the whole process. And there have been payments with that reach, $4 by $5 million. So this is how the kind of criminal underground operates in a way. But and for law enforcement agencies, it's really difficult to take down because it's such a supply chain with so many actors. It's very dynamic as well. That you take maybe one part of it out, but you have it's not a unified collective of stakeholders. So it's a resilient, let's say, resilient system. What we have done and how we have helped our clients is that we can monitor whether the credentials or access to our clients is being sold on the criminal underground. So this is one of the proactive ways on how you can predict whether and how you can protect your organizations from these kinds of attacks. So it's about monitoring all of those underground marketplaces and constantly searching for assets that would relate to your company. I promised to also speak a little bit about hacktivism and nation states within this context. So a few words about hacktivism. So hacktivism isn't a big threat commonly to organizations. Hacktivism is just like activism is all about fighting for a cause, sending a message, and then perhaps causing a confusion. And the common ways on how hacktivists kind of reach that is that they do it very often through what is called denial of service attacks. So you flood a website or service with high amount of requests, so it's not simply accessible. Or you might have more advanced hacktivist groups who leak data that support their kind of political goals or social goals. Or you might have like events where websites are defaced or some services are defaced. And here you see when the war started in Ukraine, there were gas stations in Russia hacked to present a message that glory to Ukraine. But in the end, it's quite low impact because these actors commonly don't have very high level of resources and skills. It becomes interesting and relevant when nation state-based operations are masked as activism, because in this case it can be very targeted and the people behind it are very skilled and the organizations behind it. And now as my kind of this example as well. So I spoke about Ukraine, and Ukraine is in the forefront of everything that's happening in cybersecurity. So they have experienced attacks against critical infrastructure. They've seen coordinated campaigns that are masked as ransomware, that are out there to destroy their data, etc. But within the context of hacktivism, there are also very interesting cases where they are crowdsourcing different activist activities in Ukraine, and you can go to the website of IT Army of Ukraine, which is a pro-Ukrainian group, and you can see very easy instructions on how to do your own DDoS attacks against Russian targets. So we're seeing a new kind of level of activism that is being, that's really developed within the Ukraine-Russia crisis, because you have both sides that are very competent within the cybersecurity and especially offensive cybersecurity sphere. And as my last slide, a few words about state-sponsored actors. For state-sponsored actors, the message really is that information is power. So everything is related to getting valuable information or pushing out information that has some influence over the targets, which are usually other nation states. So it's about, first and foremost, about political espionage. So espionage as a practice internationally is kind of the norm. Every big power does it, and using cyber means is just another medium to do so, and at a very large scale. And you might have heard the Office of Personnel Management of the United States and the leak and the operation against it, where allegedly China affiliated actors had access to all of the personnel management data of the American military. But political espionage, I would say, is the most prevalent activity that is done by state-sponsored actors. Then you also have corporate espionage. If you're operating in a domain that is strategically important for the country that you're resided in, you might be targeted by corporate espionage, where you steal valuable intellectual property, etc. And this is mainly a problem that's been highlighted between the US and China, where China is accused of stealing invaluable amounts of intellectual property and put it into use for its own kind of strategic industries. What is also worth mentioning is the kind of track of influence operations. We all probably know the story of the elections in the US in 2016. Cybersecurity really became part of it, where you saw data leaks from the Democratic Party, and this was seen as and really attributed as a Russian operation that was masked as an activist doing it. But all the main agencies in the US really said that it was Russia who was behind it. So, but again, it was about publishing information. It's not really about causing, direct damage yet. And then you have theft and ransom. So something that would be categorized as criminal activities. And the state of North Korea is really in the forefront, targeting crypto exchanges, different crypto companies stealing cryptocurrencies, also targeting banks, stealing millions and millions of dollars just to support the system. And when we think about the effects that the Ukraine war might have to the whole cyber threat landscape, then I think this is the answer. Once countries are cornered, and Russia is, as I brought out before as well, is a well-known place where you have cyber criminals operating. It's likely that once the dust settles or the Ukraine crisis de-escalates in some way, we'll see probably we might see a spike in different kinds of criminal activities against Western institutions, not only for political means, but also to gain kind of money and financial assets to support operating of the system. And we've seen signs from Russia as well that what they call patriotic hacking is a known kind of area of operations that they want to even build some kind of a legal framework around it. So So this is something that we are kind of monitoring closely, and we'll see if the focus goes away from Ukraine, we'll definitely see a spike in different kinds of operations. That might also include ransomware. And lately, for example, North Korea has also seen to be engaged in different ransomware operations. But I'll finish here. I'll give the word over to Craig, and then we can have some Q&A.
Okay, thanks very much, Henry. It's always fascinating to see what goes on in the online equivalent of the rough side of town. So thank you for your very clear description of everything that happens there. So now we've seen who the threat actors are, the tactics they use, and what they want from your business. It's easier to think about the various ways in which a business can improve its security posture. And this broadly falls into the three main chapters of proactive resilience, ongoing resilience, and reactive resilience. Now, I won't talk about any of these in detail, but I will take a minute just to give you a brief overview of the things that fall into each one of these chapters. So starting with proactive resilience, it's obviously important to have incident response and business continuity plans in place to ensure your organisation knows how to respond to a crisis. No business could possibly expect to take the correct steps in the panic and confusion that inevitably follows a cyber attack, and having effective and practiced plans and procedures in place gives the best chance of resuming business as usual operations as quickly as possible. Now, we often help our clients with tabletop exercises and cyber exercises, which can be tailored to their business, so we can put them through their paces in a safe and simulated environment to see how they would respond to a cyber crisis. It's also possible to engage in penetration testing or red teaming, where your systems are tested or outright attacked by hackers deployed by us to see how well they stand up to threats. And this can be helpful where businesses are already paying for third parties to monitor their systems, as it gives them an opportunity to put their external security consultants through their paces to see if they're getting what they think they're paying for. For more sophisticated organisations, we're able to create a digital twin to allow an exact replica of your systems to be built and attacked to see how your systems respond to attacks. And that's especially useful as it takes all of the guesswork out of finding out how systems respond to threat actors, as you can see in real time, in a safe environment, the impact that the attack is having on your business. From a proactive perspective, it's also possible to undertake some attack surface reduction, so you can understand the extent of the vulnerabilities within your IT landscape, map the data that you hold, and use global usage trends to spot red flags within your organisations. And that exercise can be helpful for businesses that have electronic devices on their network, whether it's CCTV, scanners, or medical or engineering equipment, which can't of itself be secured using traditional methods and can act as a wormhole into the network. Now, many organisations are shocked to discover the extent of the IT infrastructure and the number of vulnerabilities that exist within their network, but by properly understanding that, informed decisions can be taken on how to resolve vulnerabilities. So ongoing, it's well known that hackers are often in systems for a significant amount of time before the attack starts to take place. They tend to go in and infiltrate systems and start to gather intelligence. Endpoint detection is a useful way of continually monitoring threats. It's also possible to have a security operations centre monitor your systems 24/7 to ensure that threats or vulnerabilities are spotted and remediated straight away. And that delegates the need for round-the-clock, eyes-on-glass protection. And one of the greatest ironies of business is it's not uncommon for office blocks to have a security guard patrolling the building 24/7, while it's often the case that no similar safeguards exist in respect of the IT infrastructure. As Henry alluded to, cyber threat intelligence also plays an important part in proactively spotting threats. Just as the intelligence services monitor known threat actors from a law enforcement perspective, the same can be done to monitor the activity of cyber criminals. And many of you will recall the BA and Marriott data breaches, which led to some staggering fines being issued by the Information Commissioner's Office. And it was reported that the Marriott vulnerability carried over from its 2016 acquisition of Starwood Hotels, which neatly highlights the importance of embedding cyber threat intelligence into the due diligence process, which takes place ahead of merger and acquisition activity. Reactive, whenever I talk to people about cybersecurity, there's a tendency for people to jump straight to thoughts of Henry and I being parachuted into burning server rooms to fix problems. That's probably the clearest indicator of all that very often people only come to proactive cyber resilience after a crisis. It's very common for a multifaceted team to have to assemble to respond to any cyber crisis that takes place. And that team will often include lawyers, digital forensics and incident response teams, communications teams, PR, and senior management. When you think of the cast that inevitably has to assemble to respond to an incident, it's easy to see how the costs associated with responding to it quickly mount up. And it's often the case that that expense comes out of the blue and can quickly eclipse contingency allocations and budgets, causing real cash flow and profitability issues. While no cybersecurity solution is fail-safe, the cost and impact of an incident can be seriously mitigated by how quickly an organisation identifies and responds to the threat and how well it copes with the disruption that brings. It's very rarely the case that headline-grabbing cyber attacks talk of the hackers overcoming best-in-class security measures. It's much more common for basic vulnerabilities to be exploited within organisations that could and should have done better. And in many cases, the simplicity of the attack is what has the most detrimental impact on consumer confidence and reputation after the event. I'm sure we'll all know someone who fitted an alarm after their house had been burgled or their car had been broken into, which rather defeats the purpose of the spend. So the simple message I would leave you with today is where people's cyber resilience journey starts with incident response, the proactive and ongoing security measures inevitably follow. But if you invest in proactive and ongoing security solutions, you give yourself the best chance of avoiding having to ever incur the cost of a reactive cyber spend. I'm sure I speak for both Henry and I when I say don't hesitate to get in touch if you would like to discuss any of the issues that we've covered today in more detail. Before I invite questions, I just wanted to flag that we issue a free cyber threat intelligence newsletter. That's a curated document created by Henry, which we issue on a weekly basis. It flags key risks and trends and helps clients understand what activity and threats are current and tells you how to mitigate risks. So please do feel free to subscribe to it. We will pop the link in the comments and we'll also follow up with an email to everyone that is subscribed for today's event. So that said, thank you all very much indeed for taking the time to join us this morning. I hope you found the session worthwhile and I would be very happy to throw the forum open for questions. Okay, so I see that the Cyber Threat Intelligence newsletter link has gone into the comments. If there are no comments for now, please feel free to reach out to Henry and I offline. We'd be very happy to answer any questions that you might have going forward. But thank you very much again for taking the time to join us today. Thank you.
Thank you.